Okay, so we're going to have a few questions at our lineup of speakers, and we have special guests on the end, John Neal, who's an expert in ancient metrology, amongst other things. And also Christine Roan is another guest as well, who hosted the John Michell Memorial Lecture with Richard Heath. Along with Richard Heath, Peter Knight, Chris Hardy, and Patrick McManaway. And Scotty's going to be running around with the mic, so if you have any questions, please use the mic so everyone can hear and we can pick it up on the recordings as well. So, who has a question, please?
Yeah, just in regards to your quarry lecture. So do you know of any sites where the stone circles or what have you are built near the quarries?
Stone circles that are built near the quarries.
Well, I guess you're usually pointing out sites that are hundreds of miles away from the quarry.
Well, no, it varies, to be honest with you. It does vary quite dramatically. Obviously, in the Preseli area, there are multiple stone circles, dolmens and other sites, not that far from that particular area. And you do get that. Baalbek's obviously very close to the main site. But yeah, I think you do get ones that are very close. You know, there's multiple examples of that where they just literally use the stone out of the ground and build it directly there and then. You get a lot of that with the megalithic chambers in New England, actually. They're just lifted from the ground or dug out and cut and then used pretty much in that area. So it varies, that one. It varies. Next question.
A question for Richard. You mentioned in your talk about the numbers and mathematics being used in stones in Northern Europe. How does that pair to mathematical systems from other places in the world, going farther right round until you come back to the other side?
Well, to the extent that I understand these things, because there are specialists, I think that the use of numbers is not really original in the original metrology, because the numbers are stored in the lengths. But they are eminently practical, and you can count them up, and you can do transformations with them, as with geometry. But when people started abstracting geometry, that would be with the Greeks that they created the actual theorem of the geometrical system. So in the ancient Near East, it's all about practical methods, and they are put down on cuneiform, and the scribes are responsible for writing cuneiform and making texts to learn it and teaching themselves in scribal schools how to do it. But I think something much simpler was probably going on in the megalithic period.
Hi, question for Hugh, just carrying on from Jim Vieira's talk there. My understanding from Ross Hamilton's research was that the mound builders and ancient monuments in America were the work of an ancient civilization, much older than the American Indians, and that the American Indians saw themselves as caretakers of those mounds. Jim Vieira's talk seemed to be contrary to that. Can you sort of explain anything according to that?
Yes, we will get into that in more detail tomorrow night. But very briefly, a lot of the early colonialists and members of the Smithsonian, antiquarian societies and others believed that there was a lost race, an advanced lost race, because there were several legends across North America with the Native Americans of a previous, very ancient, fair-skinned race, often with ginger or red hair. And bearded and things like this. And this was proven true in some places where they found these mummified remains in the southwest around Nevada. But often these were like cannibalistic giants harassing the Native Americans. And they did not look Native American, these people, the descriptions. They've even found evidence, obviously with the mummies, they were clearly Caucasian. So there's a lot of controversy about this, about the origins of who was really in America. But I think what Jim was saying is that many of the mounds do appear to be built by Native Americans. Some maybe weren't as well. So there's a real sort of mystery and a real crossover between these cultures. And it really questions, you know, it's such a large continent, why can't there be different, you know, slightly different colours of skin across a huge continent like that? And no doubt diffusionism was going on in prehistory as well, which is pretty much denied by the Smithsonian in particular. And so it's a real kind of cauldron of controversy and, you know, with all the racial things that are connected with that. But I think there's a combination of there's many different cultures there, you know, over many, many thousands of years. Because some of the mummies with the red hair go back 9,000 or 10,000 years. And also they appear in California on Catalina Island and many other places. So it's a grey area, but we will get into that tomorrow night.
Imagine that you may, I pose the question, do you have absolute evidence of some of the giants' skeleton that could be partly alien, not human?
Oh, that's a very loaded question, Chris. Thank you very much. I don't personally have any bits of alien giant skeletons, but there's a lot of very strange skulls that have obviously been found, mainly in South America and Central America, but also in North America, which are really posing some very awkward questions. Double rows of teeth, we've got evidence of horned skulls, very unusual features in the skull. So I don't personally think they're alien. I think they're all different types of humanoid linked to Denisovans, Neanderthals, and Cro-Magnon man. But there may be another. There's something called Species X, which is sort of an unknown DNA kind of lineage, which is now being noted and recorded. So it's a very, very convoluted, complicated, and controversial subject. Any more questions?
Question to John Neal, or maybe others who would like to take it. The main question here is, what were the ancients up to, and which research area would you like to go into next? Where do you think that the biggest fruits are waiting for us to answer this big question? I was hoping to, John, if you could give it a try. Where would you hope that research would go now and we find new answers?
Yeah, okay. I think what the ancients were up to is what's trickled down to us in terms of customs, and all customs are about fertility. So the ancients were up to preserving the environment exactly as they found it, but they had a very high science.
What I would like to do is, what I am doing is, I'm interested in musical harmony actually, and the relationship of that to metrology and what the ancients were up to. The people don't like the term the ancients in academia, of course. You've got to say exactly which ones. I've been knocked down a bit by that. Got up again.
This guy in the fourth row back, yeah.
Hi, thanks for all the speakers. It's been a terrific day. Richard nicely brought the relationship between astronomy and the geometry on the ground together. And so we get the nice geometrical patterns like the triangles and such like, which seems fine for a localised area. But thinking about Chris's world grid and larger aspects, could the same things be extrapolated purely mathematically, or would it require a bigger overview?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are other things at issue with a grid. And I think, you know, this what happened to them there was some particular special thing. So I used to look at the grid, you know, in the past. The people tried, you know, the Keeley and all these people that thought there was a grid underlying the Earth, in fact, like a geometrical structure. And I would say that you have to answer this, Chris. What do you think? What would be the relationship between the things that happen in Karnak, the country you come from, and your grid? Would there be any relationship between this geometry of astronomy?
Well, I must say that it's going to be a little of a news, but let's say that the last 2 years, I'm very wide range kind of research. So since 2 years, I have been, when I wrote the Sacred Network, I fell on a structure in Paris that were showing golden rectangles, stars of David, incredible hexagons, structure which I called geo-architecture, because they were taking like hundreds of monuments, and it's like the whole map of Paris. I mean, the golden rectangle, which is taking something like 3/4 of Paris, goes exactly at one point from the center of the Arc of Triomphe in Concorde, and Obelisk, and then Châtelet, precisely the fountain. So, and it's on the number 21 and 13.
But is it an astronomical alignment?
That's it. I'm coming to that. I'm sorry. I'll go quicker. And so basically, I discovered that the patron of Paris is not whoever. It's Isis on Madeleine, on Marie the Magdalene, which is inside the Mandor, inside the golden rectangle, etc. And so I get on the P number, because now golden rectangle, the long side by the small side is of course the phi ratio of 1.618. And this is a question I wanted to ask you, Richard. Where do you get this? So I get on this incredible ratio of phi, and I know of course about the Fibonacci sequence. And the next thing is that I get into the Sumerian lore, and I get a lot of information about the science of the Sumerian. And then I get in, since 2 years I got into cosmology, and I just, the book came out like 2 weeks ago, on the 21st of March, and it's called Cosmic DNA, and what I put at the origin of the universe is not only consciousness, sig energy, as I was trying to talk about this sig energy in the sacred sites, but the golden spiral with the phi ratio. So this is the link to cosmology for me. It's just absolutely natural. It's not only a ratio, a mathematical ratio, it's dynamics of a thrust of the spiral getting larger, and this is a thrust of the Big Bang.
So that's about life. It's about life then?
Yes, this is I mean, you know, you can have any kind of theory you want about the Big Bang, but if you say only that the universe on large 10 power 50 at the moment of inflation, you have not explained where did you get the energy for this inflation, you understand? You need the dynamics, and the golden spiral is absolute natural dynamics that you find. That's why you find it everywhere. You find it in the shells, everywhere. In the DNA, and in the neurons, Penrose found this phi number in the neurons.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Lawrence Main has got the mic.
If I can return to the people preceding the Native Americans, this old race. There's a similar tradition, I understand, in Northern Territories of Australia with the 40,000 or older, 40,000-year-old rock carvings. And there's a book I read about these about maybe 10 years ago. The title, it also escapes me, the title I think was Gwion. Gwion. Now, the question I have for any of you is this. The amazing thing is, the Abos say these carvings were done by the old fellas before our time. And their god was called Gwion. The amazing thing is, Gwion, of course, being British people, we all know that Gwion is in the Mabinogion, our ancient British treasure of memories, and became, after being reborn from the womb of Ceridwen, the goddess, became known as Taliesin. This is therefore a very peculiar link between Australia of 40,000 plus years ago and Britain of 1,500 years ago. Do you know any other such similarities? Do you know names of these people, say, who are supposed to have erected these stones? And are these names, such as Gwion in Australia and Gwion in Wales or Britain, coincidences you may call them, anything like that? We've already had Karnak mentioned in Brittany. Of course, there's a Karnak in Egypt. Do you know any clues that suggest this was universal? That this race was universal because of the names?
Peter?
Yeah, hi Lawrence. I don't think we need to necessarily look for a universal race, or we don't even have to surmise that all these ancient peoples actually were connecting with each other, although I'm not saying that didn't happen. But you know, when you look at Jung's idea of archetypes and the 100 monkeys, you know, I mean, that happens. We've all got this universal consciousness. Everybody on this planet is connected, and that applies equally to everybody who lived in the past. And it's amazing, it's been commented before how the megalithic structures and the stone circles all around the world tend to be built about the same time, and we're finding now, I'm sure they'll find other sites that are as old as Göbekli Tepe, I think they already are. So, to me, it's not a mystery, it shows to me the wonderful concept that we're all connected, and we're all part of this beautiful thing we call mankind. And the thing is that this knowledge, the knowledge to build all these places, obviously came through the shamans or the priests of the culture. It wasn't like the average person working in the fields, I would suggest. And of course, when you're linked into the shamanic grid, when you're linked into the human consciousness, then it's no problem. It doesn't surprise me that people are doing similar things in different parts of the world. You know, you don't need to have aliens bringing down the same knowledge at different places, and you know, it doesn't mean that the people necessarily contacted each other. And of course, if you're looking at concepts, then that's, I haven't really thought about this before, but that couldn't necessarily lead to similar words around the country, because, you know, they're around the world. But we know that, of course, with the Phoenicians and others, there was a lot of contact between the cultures. But I think when we look for alien answers to all these amazing civilizations and things, I think we're doing humanity a great disservice, because I know that our ancestors were, as you proved, were, you know, very skilled in so many areas. But I think it's all down to human consciousness and the universal archetypes, the fact that, you know, 100 monkeys with potatoes doesn't just work for monkeys. it was active throughout man's history. So people do connect with things at the same time, probably because somebody else has cottoned onto that concept. That's a possibility anyway.
More questions?
Hello, Hugh.
The gentleman with the amazing moustache.
Thank you very much. I'm intrigued by all this talk of 2 rows of teeth. Could you tell us how controversial this is and what the dentist's official position is on it? And are there any people alive today with 2 rows of teeth? And will you be showing photographs tomorrow of skulls with 2 rows of teeth?
I think tomorrow might be better to answer that question. Okay, I'll give you a quick response. Hypodontism, there's a known thing. People get it today. They're born with 2 rows of teeth. They get them removed often. Often you just get extra teeth, supernumerary teeth. It happens. It's normal. There's a percentage of people that does actually happen to. So there are probably 50, maybe 60 accounts of ancient skeletons with double rows of teeth that were giant skeletons. There are no photos we have found yet, but there are multiple reports clearly stating 2 sets of teeth in the upper jaw. Some of them could be misinterpreted as often 2 rows of teeth or double rows of teeth means your front and your bottom teeth is a double row of teeth. So there's controversy about some of this, but there's too many accounts clearly stating that they do exist. And it does happen. And I spoke to a dental anthropologist from New York University for the TV show, and she was absolutely blown away by it. And she said she hadn't come across full sets of teeth, but she got photos of supernumerary teeth, extra teeth. So it does happen. And she said it's all to do with size. The bigger you get, the more your mouth and your space in your mouth has the space to actually grow more. So it automatically will. In some cases, if you're a certain DNA lineage. Some people suggest it's Denisovan lineage, but this is all very, very early, so that not much more has been done on it just yet. But we'll get into some examples tomorrow.
Well, into this question, I must say that I did an in-depth study of the Sumerian lore, which is kind of 2,000 years at least before the book, the Bible, was written. And from what they say, that they engineer us genetically, and then they kept inputting more and more of their DNA. And they said they genetic engineer us 300,000 years ago after a few lame trials. And it so happens that the Homo erectus was on Earth since 1.6 million years without moving, without mutating. And suddenly, 400,000 or 300,000 years ago, it started mutating, and in 200,000 years, it was already totally mutated into the Homo sapiens, and it corresponds to the date given by the Anunnaki. And when you look at that and what they say, that they kept improving, the woman scientist Nidma, who was a chief engineer, genetician and biologist, life sciences, she kept improving up to Noah. So we have the same 10, we have the 10 patriarchs in the Bible, we have the 10 kings of Shurupak in the Sumerian tablets. And when what I wanted to say is that given all this, given they have, in order to have somebody civilized, that they wanted to give their civilization to their science and everything, man, then in order to do that, they kept putting more and more of their DNA, and my own opinion from the tablets is that we should have right now 95% of the Anunnaki, of the Nibirian DNA, and only 5% of the native coming from the Homo erectus. They were a race of humans, so that's my take. 95% human and 5% alien. That would be my take.
Okay. Sean, you had a question?
Yeah, it kind of follows on from that, actually. I was wondering if any of you have any ideas to why the Neolithic and some of the more complicated temples and huge stoneworks declined from manipulating huge blocks of stone, creating polygonal walls. So if it's not Atlantis, if it's not aliens, why did it, and we're evolving, why did that technology, why has it declined? Why didn't we continue to do it?
Oh, okay. Who would like to tackle that one? Okay.
Climate change. Climate change. It was the end of the Bronze Age. There were massive revolutions going on everywhere. It was like the first intermediate period in Egyptian history. It wasn't just another period. It was a time of incredible famines, and these were worldwide. I think the priesthood or the educated classes of the Neolithic, early Bronze Age, who built these monuments and were perfecting them, I think there was a revolution against them because Stonehenge didn't fall down; it was pushed down, and this happened everywhere. and it was largely to do with climate change, and I think it was volcanoes that caused the climate change, but it happened all over the world, and it brought down the Bronze Age, really. You know, what we look upon these as sort of just periods of history, but they were cataclysmic periods of history. So I think that's why it stopped. Because it was the same time as the end of the pyramid building age in Egypt as well. It came to a sudden end, and they never achieved the perfection that they'd achieved before. So look for the answers there.
Okay, any more questions, please? Lady in the back just there.
Thank you to everyone. One is a bit more of a comment about this business of the Neanderthal people, and there's been a lot in the English press recently about that we've always been taught that they were very savage people and they were very primitive and that's why they died out, but they're now reconsidering and finding that there's a lot of intermarriage and that we all have, I think they said it's about 4% Neanderthal genes in our makeup, or DNA, I'm not quite sure of the exact. But anyway, we've all got a little bit of the Neanderthal in us, and it also said that they thought that little bit was what gave us our spiritual aspect. So that was just a comment, because I know that they often say that, you know, any people who died out were terrible savages, cannibals, and things like that, and the evidence that often isn't there, but it's just the classic thing of a race who becomes predominant, you know, talking down the people, a bit like the Romans did with the Druids, you know, they said did terrible things, and of course it was just propaganda, really. But the question I wanted to ask was Chris Hardy. I was wondering if I heard correctly, you said something about, as well as the magnetic lines, you thought they were electrical elements. I don't know if I've understood, but I just wondered if you could say something about that.
Well, it's true that I had started, I wanted to explain that there were, for me, 3 levels of the component in what I call cosmotelluric lines. So I'm going to do it very quickly so that I don't go astray. The first component is basic, the root of this grid all over Earth is the geomagnetic field of Earth. It's the field lines of the magnetic field of the whole planet, and it has lines of force, which are, some of them are like parallels and others are like meridians. And on top of that, so this is purely around the planet, but of course we have a larger magnetic field which is extending outside the atmosphere, which is due to the sun and the whole solar system. Each planet has it. So that's another different magnetic field. So the one which is just on the crust of the planet has those fields. Then, when you have the crust of the planet with mountains and everything, this is completely changing locally the organization, the configuration of that field, geomagnetic. Okay. So that's a second component, is what's happening in reality is different in each different place. But you have a crisscrossing of geomagnetic lines, of lines of the geomagnetic field. Okay? And then I believe, this is totally my own theory, okay? I expose it in the Secret Network. I'm not saying this is absolute science. I believe that, second, you have the component which is cosmic. And you have a lot of roots, like in Chinese geomancy, the dragon line always are attracted by the peaks. In my own theory, what I could study and see, each time you have a mountain, each time you have a steeple, each time you have a dome, in all sacred, even an obelisk, or in all religion, all sacred buildings are created in order to be an antenna. And one thing that is still unclear for me is why in Egypt you had two of these antennas, or what is the specific energetic field that it creates, I don't know. But then so you have the building now, which is placed at the crossing of those geomagnetic lines, and the building is going to enhance the energy that is there. But I believe that the people of the megalith, which were the first one to create the grid, with many at places where the energy is ascending, and the meeting is above ground, and underground caves at the place where the energy is grounding itself, which means that it has a healing power, and the other one has an elevating influence. And so you have those two spots, and you have the extremely beautiful, perfect sites where you have both above ground crossing and the underground crossing, and on those places you had the maximum, like Stonehenge must be a place like this, like the row of the astronomical in Chartres also. Okay, this is the second element, is what you add by building, putting a megalith or putting a church, and you always put the church where the megalith was. And you have the Roman, you have the megalith, then you have the Gallo-Roman, then you have the Catholic churches all on top, and then you have one church after the other one because they were always burnt. Like on the cathedral like Chartres or Notre-Dame de Paris, you have something like 10 buildings on top of each other. On the bottom of Paris is a temple to Diana. Okay. And so this is the second element. I'm sorry to take so much time. And the third element is the element of the energy of consciousness. Is that this is something we don't talk enough, I believe, apart from you, Richard, but the fact that people, human beings or whoever, are conscious people, are gathering around a megalith on a sacred place, in a clearing or whatever, this energy of consciousness is imprinting the site, and then imprinting the building. And this is why there is so much energy on that place, from the first crossing to now cosmic energy, because the antenna is attracting energy from the cosmos, from the stars. And the third one is the energy of consciousness that is imprinted in the place. And this is why the sacred site is always at the same place. And the energy of consciousness is a great, great enigma that we have to also research.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Anyone like to add to that? Yeah.
I'd just like to add that when, in light of what's happened this week, when you said that we have 4% of Neanderthal in our body, I think politicians must have at least 20%.
Okay.
So it's 37%.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, Sean's got one more question.
On a light-hearted note, who believes in fairies?
I know Patrick does.
Why and why not? Briefly, all of you.
Why believe in fairies? It would be rude not to when they do so much for us, I think, Sean.
Fairies. I believe that, I'm not sure about fairies. Even if I don't know if I saw some beings that were in the water. I don't know how you want to call them. I know that there are beings that are not exactly of the same matter, and they are like more on a different plane of matter, I would say. I don't think it's totally immaterial, but I'm talking constantly with people that are dead, so I know they exist because I can see them where they are, and I can talk to them. And so I believe there are consciousnesses and beings that are kept their individuality and their personality, that are in another realm that has a different type of physics and the immaterial nature.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Again, it all depends how you define a fairy. You know, one man's UFO thousands of years ago would be seen as a dragon going across the sky. You know, it all depends on the culture, but certainly there are things that I think flicker into our reality. In other words, they're always there, that when conditions are right, and when particularly the conditions are right in your psyche, when you're on a shamanic journey or else you find yourself in that ethereal place. So I think these energies are always there. But Paul Devereux had a famous thing in one of his books years ago where when he was a student, 4 students saw the same light out of the window. Don't we remember that? And they all saw the same light crossing the sky, and they all drew it down totally differently. And it turns out they all had different political and religious beliefs. So yes, I believe that there are things that we can see if we change our consciousness. And isn't the world magical if we open our eyes to it? Oh yes.
They live in mushrooms, Sean, you know that.
Okay, I think the forum is ending. John Neal is leaving the building. Is that enough?